Hi. Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, I'm a programmer at TIFF now, and this is the other thing I do. My guests this week are Josh Reichmann and Michael LeBlanc, a pair of Toronto-based filmmakers whose first feature, Tenzin, is a textured character study starring Tenzin Kelsang as a young man of Tibetan origin living in Toronto who must navigate the aftermath of his brother's death by self-immolation in protest of the Chinese occupation back home. It's now streaming on CBC Gem and available on digital across North America, and you should see it. Josh and Michael picked Jacob's Ladder, Adrian Lyne's metaphysical, metaphorical 1990 thriller starring Tim Robbins as a Vietnam veteran who returns home after a traumatic wartime experience and finds his life back in New York is somehow even more hellish. If you've seen the film, you know what the deal is. If you haven't, maybe check it out before you listen to this episode. This is Someone Else's Movie.
Josh and I got together and decided, Josh, like I said, he wanted to make Tenzin, and he had this idea. And when we started talking about it, we were like, we were like, well, we have to write a script, obviously, and we wanted to go out and document as many Tibetans as we could, and just sort of get their stories, and we had this process that we wanted to do. And then we got together, and then we were throwing movies back and forth at one another to watch movies together. So we would, he'd watch a movie, I'd watch a movie, just try to build, what is the world that we're going to make? What is Tenzin going to be like and whatnot? And then Jacob's Ladder came about as a movie, and Josh loved it. He knew the movie, and I knew the movie, obviously. We had both watched it independently and loved the movie. So then we watched the movie together, and we both were like, holy, it resonated with us in the type of movie that we wanted to make. And Jacob's Ladder was the first true piece of art that influenced us when writing this film. So when you asked about this movie, I asked Josh, I was like, what do you think about Jacob's Ladder? That was one of the movies that we connected on in the early stages, 7 years ago or whatever. We hadn't watched it since. And Josh, you were, anyway, that is the answer to that. From my perspective, it's just, it did resonate with the film. It was an interesting piece of movie making that we both thought could be a good movie to talk about for this podcast.
Yeah, I feel like there's a few touchstone films or pieces of works in life that you don't. Well, maybe it's because one watches them at the right age or the right time in development, and then they really can't be erased from one's lexicon, one's, or what is it, vernacular of how you think about art or making things. And I think it's almost lucky or auspicious or predestined. I don't know how one wants to think of it, but it's really powerful and was exciting. I'm using a lot of adjectives here. That the idea of reincarnation, mind, the characters, including the ones that self-immolate, and the idea of a haunting, and the idea of perspective and consciousness, and the underpinnings of Buddhism, right, that are sort of laced into the film that we were already playing with. That's in Jacob's Ladder, and for me, Jacob's Ladder was something I just enjoyed as a young, a kid, and I understood that he was playing with weird, he wasn't the timelines and perspective and consciousness is being played with. I guess as a kid, that one appreciates that. It's a twisty feeling. But the fact that those things converged, it was okay, this is the blueprint. And also in the horrificness, and then even in the romance and some of the sexual, and we don't have a lot of that in our film, but we do have a dread. I don't know what word, there's probably amazing words for lovers, loss, dread, dream loss, and so we already had those components, and that movie has those components. And I was thinking of that before this podcast. I'm sure we could dig into it, but there's a lot of corollaries. Like there's a lot of them. So anyway, when we watched it together, it was like, now we know. It's not like, oh, it's the hero's journey based on this. It's not, whatever. It was like this, we can hang our hats on, and we're going to be able to come back to this a bunch of times. So yeah, I agree. It was like, we both agreed, which is great because we need to agree on something in order to make it together.
Yeah. In the beginning, I remember when we thought of the movie Jacob's Ladder to be like, what do you think about Jacob's Ladder? Like, yeah, I guess, but in my mind, I sort of like thought Jacob's Ladder could be like an interesting influence because I knew it was like a little bit scary, and I knew it had to do with. But I had watched it, and like Josh said, I wasn't like super hyper where I hadn't dissected the movie. I had just watched it, and then when we watched it, we were like, holy mac! I didn't even know how amazing this movie was until we watched it again. Like I knew it was a good movie, but I was like, it had all of those
Special.
elements, and it's a special movie, and it handled it so well. And there's some moments in that movie. I rewatched it again before this podcast, like a few nights ago, and I like cried again. Like in one very specific moment, I was just like when he wakes up from the bath and he comes out, and his wife is like, he really thought he was back with his wife. He's talking about this bad dream about the woman that worked in the mailroom, and you know that is the reality. And then he wakes up. It's in the dream on, that line, dream on. Like it's just like, I mean, it gets you. It gets you and it's super scary. Anyway, it was that I think that sort of answers a little bit of that question. Yeah.
We're just getting excited about the movie. Yeah, I mean, you talking about the scene makes me have the palpable, like, dread, sadness, loss, like the impossible nightmare of like ascending and descending, the ladder into hell and heaven. That's like life. It's like when you leave a relationship and you wake up and your partner's not there, or when someone dies. I mean, that movie gets to some of that, where it's like the nightmare and then the sobering reality. Like I still have to have a shower now in this reality. And it's like, and then you still laugh. And then you have to go to your mailroom, like in your reality. You're like, but that isn't my world. Didn't I cultivate that's samsara? Like that's also the fundamentals of the Buddhist proposition, is that it's gonna suck all the way. You're gonna have some pleasurable things happen, and when one tries to like pin themselves on that, it's as can I just do this for 1 second? I'm sorry. I just can't not talk like this. But like,
no, go for it.
Yeah, like the Buddha said, like, because I'm a student guy. It's a big thing in my life. He didn't just Shakyamuni Buddha, the big one everyone knows, like the Pottery Barn Buddha. Like big guy. Who there are many Buddhas, but he said, he didn't just say this first noble truth that life is suffering. He said in Pali something really specific, which is life is like a cart. Like you keep trying to head down the road and you think you're going straight, and then the wheel goes in the ditch. And then people go, okay, well, that's really pessimistic. But the truth is, what's going to happen for all of us is that we get sick and die, and everyone dies. And then maybe your movie lasts. But then Bob Dylan, like, who remembers Bob Dylan right now? Like, it's getting slim. Like, I'm just saying it's getting slim. You know what I mean? Like, get us 200 years out. And it's like, point being, sorry, then big rant, but like we're on a podcast. We're supposed to do this stuff.
Oh yeah, no, it's expected.
Yeah, is like that dread when Mike just said that dream on, or when the many points in that movie. It's like I know we wanted to have a bit of that because that's such a powerful and particular feeling, and maybe we got like 2% of that energy like transmitted through our version, but like it was important to us. I think, at least to me.
Yeah, like that scene when he's the chiropractor is like telling him basically about the bardo, and he's basically explaining to him about the angels, and when you hold on, that's when the demons come and get you, but if you let go, those demons turn into angels. Like that scene, it's so interesting. It's just like, I've heard you speak about that a lot when you're speaking about what is the bardo. And I'm not even going to try to even describe what the bardo is, but just that scene is a resemblance of that. And it's cool. So anyway, the film is actually, interestingly enough, quite, it's an amazing movie. Like Tenzin is not, but it's certainly influenced by by this Jacob's Ladder, like it's a good movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's about both your film and this film are about people. I mean, okay, this is incredibly reductive just by virtue of all movies are about like this. Ultimately, you could read everything as it's a person searching for meaning in a chaotic world that doesn't make sense. But it's the nature of that chaos is where I think the two line up. There's something very similar in the way Jacob's Ladder handles its kind of miasma of confusion where there is no clear path and there's a thing that someone wants on the other side of all of it. And the journey, the quest, the struggle is to simply understand what the thing is. And in Jacob's Ladder, it's ultimately, it turns out that it's a very clear path because I like the movie a lot, but there's not a lot of story. It's much more experiential and more about the moment to moment. I mean, the two, what is it? The ladder in the biblical Jacob's Ladder is the place where you go between heaven and hell, where God is wrestling with the devil, and you can sort of see it beyond the lines of perception. You're aware that it's happening, but you're safe from it in that moment. It's the space where neither of those things has happened to you yet. You don't belong anywhere. It's limbo, for lack of a better term. And in Tenzin, it seems to be more about understanding this trauma, this formative trauma that predates. I don't want to spoil too much about your film. We can talk about Jacob's Ladder all we want, but there's something at the beginning of Tenzin that hangs over the protagonist for the entire film, and his journey seemed to me to be to resolve his feelings about it, not to understand why it happened, but to understand how he feels about it, because he just won't let himself connect to that. And when you look at Jacob's Ladder, it's the story about someone resisting being at peace, right? Like refusing to succumb because he simply doesn't understand what a situation is. And it is the kind of twist ending resolution which I would ordinarily throw shoes at the screen for, because it is, it's done to death. There's a million of these movies or Twilight Zone-y kind of things. And this was the situation all along. And there's something so poetic and sad about this one. And I don't know if it's Adrian Lyne and Bruce Joel Rubin arguing over what the movie means, because I know that there was some dissonance between the two of them on interpretation. Bruce Joel Rubin is coming off, Ghost and My Life and was it Flatliners? He was just the death guy in Hollywood for a while. All of his movies were about near-death experiences or afterlife experiences or things like Jacob's Ladder is the in-between movie. And he was just convinced that he was telling a philosophical story through the script, through this genre piece that he had written. And Adrian Lyne was all about the frenzy and the flash and the style. And not that he was uninterested in the spiritual stuff, but it was the means to the end for him, which was to put people on this ride through hell, which the movie states beautifully with the subway car ad at the very beginning. I remember seeing that. I saw that at a press screening with about 250 people in one of the old Uptown theaters underneath the original Uptown in Toronto. And there were groans at that pan, like the first two subway ads, New York and hell. And there were people in the theater who were just like, and then it got them. It didn't matter. It just beat them down because it is so committed to that bit of creating this, this absolute garbage universe where everything is awful. And of course he wants out, but that's Lyne. I think that's Adrian Lyne. He wants to play with the production design and invent the shaky head visual thing that David Lynch would go on to use in his movies so eloquently. And he's just playing like he's stirring this huge pot with all these ingredients in it. And one of them is Bruce Joel Rubin's screenplay. And then you have, this is my pet theory now. Then you have Tim Robbins, who is playing the script. Like he is not acting to camera at all. He is doing the page and just carrying all these deep, complex, almost like subdermal emotions just underneath his skin. And I don't think I'd ever seen him do something like that before. I don't think he'd had the opportunity, but it's phenomenal. I mean, that's the movie for me. It's not about the intentions of the film. It's about watching this guy suffer and find his way through. And it's I don't think I gave it enough credit the first time I saw it. It just, because it all just gets shouted down in the chaos of the movie. But then I rewatched it a while back, and I was surprised at how mature and sad he is, because he was still pretty young, Tim Robbins.
Yeah.
And he just carries this stillness in almost every scene. It plays like confusion sometimes, but it seems like it's what you said about the scene where he wakes up in the ice bath. He's just enjoying being alive somehow. Like it's almost like his senses are working again and he doesn't know how to process the information. And it's such a fascinating performance that now I find the movie way more emotional than I did the first time around.
Yeah,
his eyes and his affect and his body carries a huge amount, and he's a big physical presence. And then when he lumbers happily out of places, he's childlike and fresh, and he feels like dewy, and his jacket is dewy, and his shoes are kind of squishy, and he's a content. He's someone who seems made easily content, and that is a horror, because that person up against this psychic arena is not a formidable, like, that's not a good match. And in that way, he's a perfect person to put in there. And that is, for me, really about his physicality. Says, I mean, he's obviously doing an internal job. He's internalizing everything necessary, or he's naturally a good fit, or whatever that nice blend is. But no, Tim Robbins is like the movie, but everyone is pretty amazing in that. Like the woman who plays the mailroom, means her spite, her condemnation, her sexuality, her lovability is both horrific. Like, she's someone we can relate to, whatever you want to dig into what that is, those energies. But like, those are there's terror in that, because it's like you picked the wrong person and you didn't know until you were in need. And then he's brought to his knees because of the depth of confusion, but the only person there is this death mother shadow, feminine aspect, or whatever you want to call her. That a moment earlier was supporting him and pinching and kissing him, and this playful energizer that only a childlike man would enjoy and fall victim to. And so everyone's pretty amazed. Like, it's a Hollywood movie, or whatever, or trying to be. I don't know what it's trying to do. That's why it's weird. It fits in that perfect, like you said. If people groaned at that beginning, it's because, it's got these tropey things, and then you excuse it a minute later because of something, some energy in it that's just not as common. It's not Flatliners. It's not 9.5 Weeks. There's something else happening. 9.5 Weeks is cool, but like, it's, something else.
Did this movie do well in the box office back in when it came out? Was it like a hit or something? I don't. No.
I remember it doing okay. It wasn't a massive hit, but it came out it was released by TriStar Pictures, but it was a pretty small release, as I remember. They didn't have the video rights. They didn't push too hard. It was really much more of a hit once it came out on tape. It was, budget of 25 million, box office 26.1, so not great.
Yeah. But it's just interesting that a movie I just don't believe that anyone would make a movie like this and put money, even that type of money, in a movie like this today. Like, it would just be, it would never happen. Just like, I'm shocked that this is like a mainstream movie. It's sort of interesting, like that.
Yeah, I mean, this was Adrian Lyne's follow-up to Fatal Attraction, which was nominated for Best Picture and a bunch of other stuff just a couple of years earlier.
It's just so cool that he was allowed to do this movie. I don't know. I just think it's like, like no one else would have been allowed at this time. But it's interesting, like how he's sort of like a sex symbol in the movie. When you watch it, I'm like, wow. It's just like, that is interesting as well. Like, just like, and I like it. I like it that he is, like, when he's walking past the women, when he's going under the bridge, and everyone's like, Mystic, like that's it. Like, and then she's like, oh, you're so hot. He's like walking, everyone around him is like sort of and he goes to the party and people are flirting with him. It's just like such a,
you're dead, baby.
Yeah, you're dead. Anyway, It's pretty, because he just, anyway, it's interesting that he's playing that character in a way.
Yeah,
as well.
I mean, it's the Last Temptation of Christ reading, right? Like he's offered all this pleasure if he stays, but then ultimately starts seeing through it immediately. Which again feels like, I mean, Last Temptation of Christ had just come out a couple of years earlier. Platoon had come out a few years earlier. It feels very much like a script of the moment, and it's hard to explain to people now, 33 years later. It's like, no, those were all things that were happening in the movies. That's how you won Oscars. It's like Adrian Lyne had a carte blanche after Fatal Attraction, which was a massive hit and sparks the entire erotic thriller thing that happened that culminates a few years later with Basic Instinct and Showgirls and all the stuff that goes too far on purpose and becomes camp. But, Fatal Attraction is deadly serious. The bunny boiler thing was supposed to be a big, scary moment. It just became silly the moment people actually saw it because it's a ridiculous image. And so you have him with his carte blanche saying, I want to make this movie and I want to do it my way. And they threw some money at him, but not a lot. And it looks like 50 million. I mean, it's a gorgeous looking film. It's just one of those things where all of it feels like this gumbo of studio notes that were considered and then rejected so he could make his own thing. So the Vietnam thing is kind of necessary, but ultimately meaningless, right? Like the crawl at the very end is something that I've always felt was kind of dopey because this entire thing is a fantasy or a hallucination or a death dream or whatever you want to call it. So there's absolutely no point in like saying at the very end, well, a lot of Vietnam vets were dosed with stuff. It's like, you don't know that. The devil said so. Like there's absolutely no, that Michael Newman character may not even exist. It's nice that he's there to give us this, but it's so clearly, it's like the Total Recall thing of the distraction in the second act of the film. Total Recall was the same year actually. So maybe that was why people didn't cotton on to this one, because it is effectively the same structure, just with a way more downbeat story.
Well, I would jump on what you said about being dosed and the savagery that occurred. And I feel like what it does do is give him a chance to have it gives us some story. It's like meat. So then you can go meet people, and those people can become signposts or, pinball, like things that he can bounce off of and get deeper into intrigue. And then it's a place for demons to be held within. Like the demons become connected to a world he can believe in, as so long as he wants to believe in it. Does that make sense? It's not just there's demons and now I should investigate my mind. It's that there's these things and there's this mystery within the mystery. I just think that as a convention is useful if you're going to start describing someone, the nature of mind. There's going to be components that animate. You think of our own lives and our own minds and life. If it was as easy as seeing consciousness for us all as, and the subject of what your room there and me and you talking as illusory ultimately and built on little sub things you can't find the beginning of or whatever, that's the premise of emptiness, let's say, right? If it was as easy as just me saying that, we would come out of it. But it takes the mystery of a whole lifetime of going, oh, it turns out that everything I was attached to was useless in that it just brought suffering. You know what I mean? Like, we're in the attribute component space. So anyway, I get not to get too out there about that, but I do think that's how one thinks about what you do with story pieces and characters and objects. And so while the Vietnam thing is very of its time and maybe necessary for the purging era, it's like that's what my childhood was, people digesting and metabolizing Vietnam. You know what I mean? So it just had to be something they did something with, which is actually weird that it's so on the nose that people. I always found that weird that there was a lot of Vietnam movies not that long after Vietnam. I think that's heavy that people did that. That directors and creators were doing something related to something. You know what I mean? Anyway, sub note on that. But just I was just feeling what you were saying with that, and I guess I kind of like the psyops story. I like those stories. I happen to like those stories. That conspiratorial stuff is kind of fun.
Hey, it's Norm interrupting my own show to bring you up to speed on Shiny Things, my newsletter about physical media, culture, and the odd streaming project. Over the last week, I've been catching up to some terrific stuff, including the Via Vision imprint box sets celebrating Gene Hackman and Walter Hill, though weirdly, neither collection includes the one movie they made together. Sign up for a 14-day free trial at shiny-things.ghost.io or find a link in the Semcast Twitter account. You like reading about movies? I like writing about them. Come check it out.
But you like conspiratorial stories.
I mean,
for sure.
That's a story, right? There's something being conspired, whether God is conspiring or the cosmos that's animating the characters that don't know they're being animated by like a external force, or it's a more observable force that can be touched that's made of people in I don't know.
It's interesting what you were speaking about earlier about how like that ending, it was all a dream, or her like it was all. A lot of times those movies don't actually like make sense because they're just deciding to say that they were just sleeping, or they were dreaming, but in this movie. I actually think it makes like perfect sense. It's like a perfect piece. I don't like the only thing I really don't like about this movie is when he sees his son and walks up into the white light up the stairs. Like I really dislike that. And I wish that wasn't in the movie. I just like, I wish that wasn't in the movie. But it is. And then the line at the end with the guys saying, just talking about. I didn't need that either. I didn't need any lines at the end. I would have just liked, but similar to like when I first saw The Matrix, or like like movies that sort of like when I watched this movie, not the first time because I had no idea what I was watching, and it just scared me when I was younger, and I didn't even try to understand it. I was just like, but when I watched it like with Josh again, and I didn't even realize what the movie was about, because I don't think I watched movies and thought about them when I was younger. I just watched them and I just wanted to experience and be entertained, but I didn't want to think. But when I watched this one again, I was like, holy shit. Like similar to The Matrix, I was like, I'm really happy that this entire movie is actually one small moment of him being the whole thing. The entire thing is like a minute, tiny moment of the moment between life and death when he's being operated on, and that could be like a millisecond, but represented into a lifetime, into a movie, and they're just operating on him, and the whole movie is in this person's they're trying to bring this person back to life, but his soul is still in his body. He's experiencing all of these things, and then they're like, oh, he looks happy, like just that line, he looks happy because he did come to terms with his death in his in-between state, like you said, like the Jacob's Ladder, in the in-between state, which is the Bardo in so it's like, I remember when I saw it, I was really happy that was the ending, because I was really happy that there was a purpose for all of that Vietnam stuff, like to bring me there. And it was cool that they made an entire movie out of a frame of a moment, and I think that is really good use of that type of an ending, when the entire movie, its entire premise and everything that the movie has to do with is because he's lying there for real. It's not a dream. It's like, so I sort of like really love that ending. I think it's like the best use of that ending.
You did feel kind of bad though. Like I felt like what you're saying makes me like it, but when I saw it, I think the way I felt, the way Norm felt, I felt bad. Like feeling in my body was like, ugh. Because I think what it also does is it goes, oh, there's another movie where he's in Vietnam, but we don't know that movie. We don't know that world. All we know is what we had to endure, which is exhausting movie. Like, and so there's a little bit cheap because you were exhausted around something and then it's something else. And that, I think that's what hurts about those kind of movies. It's like, well, you played with me and I'm up for that deal when I walk into a movie theater, but I'm not up for the second deal. You didn't tell me about the second deal. I like the first deal. It makes sense. Like I paid for that. But the last deal's like, anyway, I just think that cheap or whatever.
I think with the person writing the film, it probably started with the fact that the whole movie, that this person is dealing with their in between. Like the movie started there. That was the spark of the movie, that he's dead, lying on the table. They didn't start a movie writing it, and then at the end, like other movies, like cheaper thoughts where, they'd be like, you know what? Actually, all this is a dream. Like, I don't think they did that in this movie. I think it was
that's a good point. That's a good point. That it might be the bedrock. Like it might be the actual pointillist little boop. Like it's just a point it's like a piece of ink, like, and then the whole movie fits in that piece of ink. And maybe that's the smallest movie ever made, because some people are like trying to get from point A to point B, and then they have like a mountain or like maybe there's like a shape. But this one's like a point because he's just dead. He's just like, there's like a light that flashed in his eyes and then he's dead. So like you said, that's a good point you had, Mike, that the movie's like, it's like someone just dropping a pen on it. Like, boop. The movie's just is a period. It's a period. Anyway.
Yeah. And maybe that's why it was so difficult to explain to people, not in the marketing, but this is a movie that absolutely needs word of mouth to drive it, because it is so impenetrable. The trailer and the TV spots all just looked like some kind of slasher movie almost, with this guy being chased by stuff that he couldn't understand. And then technically, yes, that's what the movie is, but it's, the film is about something. It's just told in such a, Ebert always said that, a movie isn't about what it's about, it's how it's about it. And the nature in which you choose to tell your story is what defines the narrative. And this is absolutely that kind of film, where the point of view and the perspective and the execution and the aesthetic are maybe more important than the narrative, because it's about immersing us in his confusion and his pain and ultimately bringing us through to his epiphany. And you can't sell that in a 30-second TV spot. And, people coming out of the theater trying to explain it to their friends who hadn't seen it yet just sounded like they'd lost their minds.
Yeah. I can imagine it would be very difficult to understand. It's like, because you can't actually, there's no what the version that I said, like maybe they did just put an ending on it, but I don't believe they did, because I believe they probably structured the entire movie based on this idea. But then you're like, well, what movie are we watching? Are we watching the movie in Vietnam, or are we watching the movie where he's with his wife? What's the reality? Or is it with his girlfriend? Okay, no. The real movie is with his girlfriend, but he wishes he was with his wife. Wait a second, but he's dead. Like, it's just like, but it actually makes perfect sense. It's sort of like, it's in a way, it's not similar to it at all, but in some ways, it's like Tarkovsky's Mirror, like how it plays itself backwards. Like the inciting incident is at the end of the movie, but it's being set up at the beginning of the movie. But it's like, so when you try to explain that movie, and it's like, well, it's about this guy that like it is his mother is played by his mother's played by the wife of the man. Like, it's the same character being played by, like, it's like a very difficult thing to explain. But I mean, similarly confusing movie, but I mean, like, I think that Tarkovsky's Mirror actually is a perfect structured movie. It's like perfectly structured, whereas this, it is a little bit more montagey, like you said, but I think it makes sense because it's all mind. But you can't, it's interesting, you're not, well, just because it's a mind movie you can do everything. You can't. You still need the narrative to be like as strong as anything else. But it does sort of work.
Well, I think
pretty well.
Yeah. As we're having this conversation, what comes to mind for me is that the reason that film, movies, whatever, affected me to the point of mutating my sense of life and purpose and reality, and for most people it's the same way, the spectacle, is that they are dreams. They're our best version. And this is not to be like pretentious about it, but like, I know people have written like tomes about this kind of thing, but it basically comes down to like, do you want to watch a movie that's, it's going to be a dream, but you believe it? Or do you want to sort of know that you're watching a dream? And that's sort of like lucid dreaming. It's like the conviction of your dream is like has more impact almost when you don't know you're dreaming. When you wake up in your dream a bit, you're more empowered, and yet it's not as mysterious. The mysteries, it's different. I don't know. There's a bunch of words I said there. I'm trying to say that like dream itself, you can't. When people are mad at the fact that a movie is like has the dream element, like the that it allows itself to be known as dreamlike, I'm like, well, that's just kind of dispelling it. And if you do it delicately, then I think you're doing something really special. Like we wanted to do that with our movie. It's like you're allowed to say movies are dreamlike and life is dreamlike. And to be too convinced and try to convince everyone of some hard story is almost like that's being more asleep and more manipulative to people. Do you know what I'm trying to say? It's like more manipulative to make people not know they're watching something dreamlike, because movies are inherently dreamlike. So is life. Boom. Enjoy whatever I say. Enjoy playing that back.
I mean, there's that fine line between like it being so dreamy and just confusing, like that thing where people say like
crap. You're talking about
like
crap.
The difference between confusing and the mystery versus the confusing. It's like it's a fine line between those two things, and it's like trying to be more mysterious, but sometimes through your mystery it can get confusing. And dream movies can sometimes just be like a montagey feeling and just not have structure. Like but I mean, yeah, I hear what you're saying, Josh. I do. I mean, I think that Tenzin is a little bit like actually probably. I hope not confusing, but I hope it's not absolutely confusing. But yeah, we tried. We tried to put as much story in it as we could.
It looks good. It looks really good. It looks good. It has good music.
No, come on now.
I think it's a little more than that. But that does sort of get me to the question that I always end on, which is if there is anything, and I think we've sort of touched on it, is there anything in Jacob's Ladder that you've fully assimilated, borrowed, or even outright stolen for your work? Is there something specific to Tenzin that wouldn't have existed without Jacob's Ladder, or is it just sort of a thematic resonance?
Yeah, I can't say that. You know what I mean? I like the opening, like subway, like, you know what I mean? Giving us ideas for locations and things like that. We did that with a lot of movies. Like we watched like Amores Perros was another influence, and we looked at that quite a bit. And Tarkovsky with the sound design, I was like really, into and listening to this idea of not having room tone and just like things just being very present with voices and things like that. I mean, like so we looked at a lot of movies that influenced Tenzin for sure, and Jacob's Ladder was one of them. But I would actually say in the end, Jacob's Ladder ended up being like the least one that we stole from. But we did like take scenes from it, like in a way, like we were like, well, we could do a cool subway scene that would make sense, and I think that came from Jacob's Ladder, this idea of a subway scene, and otherwise, just the way that they played so beautifully. I mean, we try to, and obviously it's so difficult because in some ways they just really pulled it off in Jacob's Ladder, like just like to make you feel for him so much, the protagonist. So we were trying to like tread this horror, and I think we just felt like Jacob's Ladder did that quite well, where like the horror and the beautiful at the same time, like treading that line between like horror film and then like just pretty straight up drama. Like, so we wanted to do that, I think. So but we didn't. We looked at it and never looked at it again. Like honestly, like it was like I think we looked at it in our first few weeks of writing, and then we never looked at Jacob's Ladder again and then we shot 1 year later.
Yeah.
I remember looking at it and caring about it for like a couple of weeks and really trying to be like, okay. And then we just wrote a script, actually. Josh and I wrote one, went and shot that script. And then we shot for 5 days and realized, no, we shot for 10 days and realized, oh my God, this character doesn't work at all. so we cut an entire character out of the script and just kept the character a little bit, and then decided to make another person the lead in the middle of shooting. And then we went back and rewrote the script and then shot another like 5 days, like 3 months later. Like, so we really like rewrote it, and then we rewrote the script again when we were editing, like completely rewrote all the lines and did a lot of ADR and stuff, and in editing, like on the back of people's heads a lot, and just so we could like write new scenes. So it, in some ways, we yeah. Anyway, I think that the subway was like really like we stole that. Um, I think that's about it, really. I don't know. Did we steal anything else? We might have stole like so much more. I just can't remember.
No, I think it's more like energy, sort of like a big thematic stuff than like any kind of like component or something like that. The person that was the main character was the uncle who self-immolated. The spirit was was really a character.
Yeah, well, I mean, when Michael was saying you had to reorient, and it's like, yeah, it must have been him. That's the only presence, right, is still felt, but the character is gone.
Yeah, it wasn't like it was more just the writing and the way that the scenes were coming together, and we tried to put it together. We were going for like more of like a two worlds that were coming together. And then when we tried to do that, it really wasn't working. So he's like, no, we can't have two worlds, and the crossing paths is what we wanted to do, similar to like Amores Perros in a way, where like two stories, and then they cross paths in the story, and then they go their separate ways. That was our idea. Those types of movies, I personally really love that style of movie making. But it was just too difficult to do. And then we decided, no, we just have to stick with Tenzin and just Tenzin. And then we wrote a bunch of stuff that was just purely him. And then we didn't have a lot of money, so we couldn't afford. It was like 47,000 to all in. You know what I mean? To like production. So we really wanted to go and shoot some more, like another 2 weeks. Like Josh and I, we really wanted to like develop the Chucky character, we did want to continue, but there was just no more money and we just couldn't. So we did what we did. And then we decided to just sweat equity. So lots of editing and and I own a recording studio, so we could do the ADR and stuff for free. And like, it was just a lot of just trying to make it work in the box, you know?
Right. And by focusing it so tightly onto one character, you ended up doing what Jacob Slider does, right? Like you force us into that perspective and trap us there in the story with him.
Yeah, and I'm really, really proud of the movie, and I personally I really, really love it. We're just kidding around and being a little bit hard on it sometimes, but I am very, very proud of it, and I'm proud of our first movie. You know what I mean? Like it's like we did it, and it's a cohesive piece, and obviously, as you can hear from the way that we're talking about it, it was pieced together very much so. So it wasn't like written, like perfect script written, then edited by like a bunch of writer brains, and then like shot, and then, you know, like, and then the basic structure of the script stayed. No, it wasn't that. It's like the structure of that script, just, there was no structure. It was just like ideas and thoughts, and like we just shot things. And then that's why we learned so much through this process, because to try then to make something that actually has a beginning, middle, and end, when you didn't write a beginning, middle, and end, really, though we did write a version of one, it was, I'm really proud of what we ended up with, coming at it from such, so many different angles over so many years. It kept on reinventing itself, like Josh said off the top of this hang here. How it was just a puzzle, and we just kept on reinventing it, and like through what we've learned in life and experiences that we've had and the new relationships that we built, and it became a lot more clear. Like the protest scene that was not written in the movie. We ADR'd that scene entirely. That was meant to be something completely different, but then we repurposed it and said that would be amazing. And then we sort of were like, oh, that could be potentially the inciting incident, sort of like a very loose. It's not. We don't have a strong inciting incident in this movie, so it's like, as you know, because you watched it. But still, there are these elements that like sort of like make us believe that he is ready to change. He's experienced something that and it's subtle, but he's experienced something in this moment of the movie that was not in the movie before. So, and a couple of people wrote that, we didn't write that. One of the actors did the first initial writing, and then, at the beginning, it was just subtitles and there was no one speaking. It was just things that a couple of people had said, and I wrote it in. And then we got someone that actually does those speeches to give us one of her speeches, which she translated in Tibetan because she normally does those speeches in English. And so many things over the years just came out of it, and it became what it is now, which is it's not like a perfectly written movie, but it's pretty. Like I said, I'm proud of it, and I think we pulled it off.
My thanks to Josh Reichmann and Michael LeBlanc, whose first feature Tenzin is now streaming free on CBC Gem and available on digital throughout North America. Thanks also to Brian Robertson. He knows what he did. Michael isn't on Twitter, but you can find Josh's account at Josh Reichmann, all one word, and you can find Jacob's Ladder on Blu-ray and DVD from Maple Pictures in Canada, it's out of print but still around, and Lionsgate in the US. It's also streaming on Prime Video, MGM+, Paramount+, and Canopy in the US, and available to rent or buy on various VOD services in North America. Via Vision released a pretty great all-region special edition Blu-ray earlier this year as well. You can find me on Twitter for a little while longer at Norm Wilner, and you can find this podcast there at Semcast, SEMcast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. The first year of the show is still available for just $20 at payhip.com/Semcast. That's the first 52 episodes of Someone Else's Movie, 44 of which aren't currently available anywhere else. And check out my newsletter, Shiny Things, at shiny-things.ghost.io. I think you'll enjoy it. Our theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it, or the show in general, please say so. Leave a review wherever you've been listening. Every little bit helps. It truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network while you're doing that. Stay safe, watch movies, wear a mask if you go out, get your booster when you can. I'll see you next week.